of AOC Community Media in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate, our source of local journalism here in Lafayette, Louisiana, and in Louisiana and the surrounding area. Thanks so much for joining us. We're glad to provide this public service every Monday through Friday between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. We read you the news that is printed in the Acadiana Advocate, again, as a public service for our visually impaired community and as a public service to you, the community who may be too busy to sit down with the news. So without further ado, let's get right into our news this morning. Starting with our first headline, Judge blocks release of body cam video. Officer identities in Pellerin shooting also kept sealed, by Claire Taylor, staff writer. A state district judge granted temporary restraining order Tuesday that would prohibit the family of Trayford Pellerin from viewing body camera footage of his August 21st fatal shooting by Lafayette police officers. The restraining order, which also prohibits the release of the identities of officers involved and information related to the shooting, was filed by attorneys representing 3 officers involved in the fatal shooting, according to Lafayette attorney Allison Prejean, General Counsel for Police Association of Lafayette, local number 905. Prejean is representing one of the officers. It was earlier incorrectly reported that the police association sought the injunction. A report that the police association is paying the legal fees of the involved officers also is false, Prejean said Wednesday afternoon. However, she said part of the dues officers pay goes to the Professional Law Enforcement Association's legal defense funds. The request for an injunction was filed under seal. Prejean said the attorneys had no further comment. The order granted by the 15th Judicial District Judge David Smith says Louisiana Police, the Lafayette Police Department, and Lafayette Consolidated Government are prohibited from releasing to the public the identities of the 3 officers. Statements, documents, and reports pertaining to the shooting and audio-video footage taken during the shooting. Those prohibited from receiving information include any person, media company, news organization, or other entity not associated with the investigation. The order also calls on the 3 departments to show cause on September 15th as to why an order of protection should not be granted prohibiting the release of the identities and information. In a meeting with the Pellerin family last week, Lafayette Mayor President Josh Guillory said he would allow the family to privately view police body camera footage from the shooting, according to Ronald Haley, a lawyer for the Pellerin family. Guillory sent a letter to District Attorney Keith Stute's office Tuesday morning, informing him of his intent to let the family view the footage, according to a news release distributed Wednesday afternoon by LCG spokesperson Jamie Angel. Smith signed the injunction Tuesday afternoon. Mayor President Guillory is committed to honoring the promise he made to the Pellerin family and has directed city parish attorneys to advocate for the accommodation of a private viewing for the family of the footage at a hearing scheduled on September 15th, the news release states. Haley issued a statement Wednesday morning in reaction to the judge's order. We are profoundly disappointed, though sadly not surprised, that the Police Association has sought a restraining order to prohibit Mr. Pellerin's family from understanding what happened in his last, most terrifying moments before he was killed in a barrage of bullets, Haley said. It leaves us no choice but to wonder what they are hiding, Haley said. If the mayor intended for the names and faces of officers to be blurred, then it only stands to reason that the Police Association is not attempting to protect their identities. Rather, they clearly don't want the family to see the brazen, violent killing of Mr. Pellerin because it will implicate the department, demonstrate a lack of proper training on or utilization of de-escalation tactics and restraint, he said. Jarvis Martin, president of the Police Association of Lafayette, local number 905, said in a news release Wednesday after the association is in no way involved in the request for an injunction. When the facts of the case are presented in its entirety, we are confident a much better understanding will come of the split-second decision those officers were faced with on that tragic night, Martin wrote. As we support our fellow officers, we also grieve for our community and with the Pellerin family. We pray for comfort in this tragic time. Our next story, first day, finally. Lafayette Superintendent, Schools in Good Place as Students Return by Katie Gagliano, staff writer. The much anticipated return to school was realized for Lafayette Parish Public School students this week as educators began orienting students on COVID-19 safety protocols and easing students back into a classroom setting after nearly 6 months apart. Superintendent Irma Trosclair said Wednesday morning first reports from school leaders and teachers were positive and everyone was in a good place. Portions of the plan are shifting as changes are needed or people find more efficient methods, but so far things have run smoothly and the students are adapting well, she said. We've been very impressed with the preparation, the planning, and the thought that has gone into meeting the safety needs of students and staff, she said. Students' first day of in-person classes were split between Tuesday and Wednesday as students began school on the district's Phase 2 hybrid learning schedule, with students split between A and B groups. The students in 1st through 5th grade will shift to full-time in-person learning Monday, while pre-K and kindergarten students will begin their orientation period Monday and shift to full-time on September 21st. Students in 6th through 12th grade will remain on the hybrid plan while the state remains in Phase 2 of Governor John Bel Edwards' reopening plan. Transportation, always a hurdle for the roughly 32,000 student district, has been running effectively and without major complaints so far, the superintendent said. The Transportation Department redesigned and tested route plans over the summer to assess how doubling up routes would work since buses can only operate at 50% capacity, equal to 36 students. Trosclair said adjustments may be made as route numbers firm up. Total bus rider numbers won't be finalized until pre-K and kindergarten students start classes and parents finish adjusting plans. The number of car riders does seem to be up as parents follow district advice to drive students when possible. A similarly fluid approach will be taken with other elements of the district plan as new guidance is handed down from the state and federal education departments and from the U.S. Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. Changes will be made when needed, the superintendent said. Plans are written on paper, but they're not written in stone. Because the situation is a fluid one, Trosclair said. District staff members are alternating between school campuses this week and next to offer support to school teams navigating the new protocols and procedures, she said. Afterward, district staff will continue to monitor schools alongside school-level leadership teams to make sure we don't let our guard down and keep the same diligence with safety protocols in the middle of the year as in the beginning, she said. There's no other priority this year other than the safety and health of our employees and our students. Of course, we want them learning, but we want them learning in a safe environment, Trosclair said. A big change for the district this fall is growth in the Lafayette Online Academy. District spokesperson Allison Dickerson said Tuesday 8,500 students were enrolled in the online learning program, but the number continues to fluctuate. Those students also began the onboarding and orientation process Tuesday and should have received an email with a link to an orientation video. Trosclair said the online academy students will follow similar paths to in-person students the first week of school, with a focus on learning new protocols and getting the necessary tools before beginning instruction on Monday. It's important all families ensure they have a current email address and phone number listed on their parent account to receive communications from the district and the online academy, she said. Student success this fall, both for hybrid learners and the online academy students, partly hinges on consistent access to computer devices and reliable internet access. Devices for students in kindergarten through 2nd grade remain on order but are expected to arrive this month. The district is in good shape to meet the device needs of 3rd through 12th grade students, including those in the online academy, Trosclair said. The district and Love Our Schools, through their Link and Learn partnership, are close to finalizing contracts with the local internet providers to cover the cost of academic internet access for qualifying families in need. Meanwhile, with devices for previously counted students still out for delivery, students new to the district have been informed that they'll need to provide their own device, including students in the Lafayette Online Academy. Trosclair said about 500 non-LPSS students have joined the system to attend the online academy, not counting new students to in-person schools, and the volume makes acquiring the additional devices difficult. It's not only about us being able to provide or us not trying to. Orders are backlogged for months. To try and place an order, my goodness, the Chromebooks were ordered when CARES Act money came out this summer, and those weren't set to get to us until November or December, she said. The Lafayette school system is also in the process of onboarding student evacuees from Lake Charles and other areas of southwest Louisiana struck hard by Hurricane Laura. Dickerson said as of Friday, 80 students were registered in the system as evacuees. Families displaced by Hurricane Laura interested in enrolling their children should visit the district's Homeless Education Services Department at the Vermilion Conference Center at 326 Gautier Road between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. School was originally slated to start August 17th, but was delayed until after Labor Day so the system could do our part to slow down the spread. Chief Administrative Officer Jennifer Gardner said August 4th. Dr. Tina Stefanski, Louisiana Office of Public Health, Region 4 Medical Director, and representatives from area hospitals backed the decision to delay after analyzing existing case spread and the strain on the healthcare system. One area of interest was hospital bed and ICU bed capacity. Hospitalizations for Region 4, which included Acadia, Evangeline, Iberia, Lafayette, St. Landry, St. Martin, and Vermilion parishes, peaked at 304 COVID-19 related hospitalizations on July 22nd. Hospitalizations were down to 244 when the school system announced its delay, but still higher than other points in the pandemic. COVID-19 hospitalizations have continued to trend downward in Region 4, but only 13 ICU beds, 8.2% of all ICU beds in the region, were available midday Tuesday, according to the Louisiana Department of Health's COVID-19 dashboard. By comparison, the state's 8 other health regions had between 8.5 to 57.7 ICU bed capacity available, with most falling between roughly 28 and 35% availability. In August, there was an average of at least 34 ICU beds available per day in Region 4. Lafayette General Health and Our Lady of Lourdes, the two largest hospital systems in Acadiana, confirmed last week a drop in COVID-19 patients, even though ICU beds were nearing capacity. That's due, in part, to patient transfers from Lake Charles hospitals in the aftermath of Hurricane Laura. Spokespersons for the two hospital systems said they were treating below 30 and 40 COVID-19 patients, respectively. And both staff writer Megan Wyatt and Katie Gagliano wrote the article. Staff writer Megan Wyatt contributed to that article. All right, so we're at the around 15-minute mark, so let's go ahead and read you some PSAs. Let's see, and this is for today, actually. Festival of Words is having a fundraiser. It's called Words for You. It's a Zoom performance. It's today from 7 to 9:30 p.m. It's online with Zoom. You can contact Martha Garner. That's FOW Martha, MARTHA, at gmail.com, or you can call 337-804-2482. In this disconnected and crazy world right now, we invite everyone to create some magic with us. Festival of Words is getting to know you. On September 10th, the Festival of Words hosts a presentation of new original works by 45 authors. The event is the culmination of a fundraiser in which the public commissions writers to create personalized poems, stories, and songs. Festival of Words is thrilled to have a diversity of authors, from poet laureates to beginners, from Lafayette to Church Point to New York City. Come listen to these one-of-a-kind premiere performances in their online cafe, grab a drink, snacks, and sit back for an evening of fun. Presenters included are Jack Bedell, Daryl Bork, Dominic Cross, Charles Garrett, Toby Daspit, Cornelius Eady, Charles Claudel Garrett, Valentine Pierce, Donnie Rose, Mona Lisa Saloy, Sandra Sarr, Tim Siebels, Tyler Robert Sheldon, Margaret Seemaw, John Warner Smith, et al., and many, many more celebrated authors. Go to the Facebook event page for Words for You. That's Words for You. The link to the Zoom Cafe will be available the week of the event, so it should be available today. Or you can contact, again, Martha at fowmartha@gmail.com or 337-804-2482. The funds raised by the Words for You contribute to the 13th Annual Festival of Words. The Festival of Words brings established authors from all over the world to Acadiana to give public readings, writing workshops in the community centers, and public schools during the first week of November. These funds will help to ensure continued expansion and success of these programs. This year's festival will be virtual and will feature graphic memorist Robin Ha, award-winning poet Erica Meitner, and Louisiana Poet Laureate John Warner Smith. And in Medicaid news, Medicaid resources, Medicaid is now covering coronavirus testing for Louisiana residents without insurance. This coverage is available to people without insurance who are Louisiana residents until the end of the federal public health emergency. You must also be a U.S. citizen to meet immigration status requirements to qualify. If you need to find a doctor near you doing testing, dial 211. If you have questions, you can call at 1-888-544-7996. You can apply for coverage in the doctor's office so that you do not have to pay for testing. When you go to get tested, the provider may ask you to apply for Medicaid. They will help you fill out the simple form. Note, providers must accept Medicaid if seeking coverage under this option. You can get to the application at www.healthy.la.gov, a provider, or you can submit the paper application by email, fax, or mail. You can also call 1-888-544-7996. That's 1-888-544-7996 to apply over the phone. You can send completed paper by email to COVID uninsured, that's COVID UNINSURED, COVID uninsured, all one word, at la.gov. You can also fax at 1-866-852-0415. You can mail to COVID uninsured applications, P.O. Box 64808, Baton Rouge, Louisiana 70806. You only have to fill out the form once, even if you need multiple coronavirus or COVID-19 tests. Coverage begins 3 months before application date and will stay in place through the end of the coronavirus or the COVID-19 event. All right, and back to our news. Our next headline this morning is Election 2020 Request for Mail-in Ballots Triple the Normal Volume. This by Mark Ballard, Capitol Bureau Editor. The number of mail ballots already requested for the November presidential election has almost tripled, leaving the Louisiana Secretary of State's office worried it won't be able to count them fast enough, according to testimony Wednesday in federal court. The milk jug is full, said Commissioner of Election Sherry Wharton-Hadsky, who is Secretary of State Kyle Ardoin's aide in charge of the 235 employees who do the hands-on work to put on elections. I am extremely concerned about getting the results on November 3rd, Hadsky said, adding the tight schedule could interrupt preparing for the December 5th runoff. Hadsky testified in Harding v. Edwards, a lawsuit asking for greater voter access to absentee mail ballots in light of ongoing coronavirus pandemic. The U.S. District Judge Shelley Dick of Baton Rouge ended 2 days of hearings asking for briefs no more than 25 pages long to be filed Tuesday. She added that she would render a written ruling in these proceedings as quickly as humanly possible. Whatever she decides about how Louisiana will vote in November likely will be appealed to the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals based in New Orleans. With additional ballots from larger parishes, it could take 2 to 6 days more to count all of the votes, Hadsky said. The latest her office has ever been in finishing the count was 4 a.m. the next day. She expects 65% of the 2.9 million registered Louisiana voters will participate in November's presidential election, which is why her division began preparing for it in February. Hadske voiced concern about handling voters in polling stations displaced by Hurricane Laura. But it's the dramatic increase in requested mail ballots coupled with the expected high turnout that gives her pause, she said. About 60,000 voters usually cast mail-in ballots under the state's existing laws, but about 156,000 absentee mail ballots already have been requested, she testified. In the July primary, about 92% of those seeking mail ballots qualified under the law for being 65 or older. Only 2% used a coronavirus-related excuse. Under existing state law for mail-in ballots, each parish's Board of Commissioners usually verifies the voter registration and checks the envelope the ballot was mailed in to ensure everything is okay. Those that are correct can be counted on a scanner. The votes that can't be scanned need to be physically inspected. Hadske said she fears not enough time will be available to get the count on election night. If it takes even a couple of days to reach the final tally, the Secretary of State's office won't have time to get ready for the December 5th runoff. Ballots need to be certified, and challenges and recount requests must be addressed, but all of the various processes can't start until the votes are counted, and Hadske said her division can't start building the December ballot until those processes are completed. For the November 3rd election, the state has 684 different ballot styles based on who is running in a particular precinct. The mail-in ballots are especially printed by a contracted printer that has been vetted and certified to ensure security as well as meet specifications. 4 experts testified, and lawyers on both sides pounded on the point that no studies could definitively tell if voters caught COVID-19 at the polls. Ardoin's emergency protocols for July 11th and August 15th primaries allowed voters to seek an absentee ballot if they were at higher risk of severe illness from COVID-19 because of underlying medical conditions, were subject to a quarantine order, were experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and seeking medical confirmation, or were caring for someone who was isolated because of the disease. But Ardoin's plan for November-December rolled back these COVID-related absentee exceptions to only those voters who test positive for COVID-19 during a 2-week window between the October 20th beginning of early voting and Election Day. Otherwise, only those already covered by state law, including registered voters over the age of 65, those who are out of town, or those in the disabled program, are able to get an absentee mail ballot. On a largely party-line vote, the House on Wednesday approved Ardoin's latest emergency plan on a vote of 62 to 32, and the Senate said yes on a 27 to 11 vote. The ballots were delivered by mail. But state law requires that Governor John Bel Edwards also approve the plan, and he did not. He did not. Though named as the main defendant in the lawsuit, the Democratic governor sided with the Harding plaintiffs, asking Dick to reinstate Ardoin's emergency election plan for the July-August primary elections. Republicans in the legislature warned Ardoin that they could not accept as broad an emergency plan for the November-December elections. Attorney General Jeff Landry and Ardoin, both Republicans, argued in federal court that absentee balloting is not a constitutional right and that the state needs to protect its elections from fraud. The defendants also pointed to a September 1st opinion by Landry saying many voters concerned with underlying conditions made more dangerous by COVID-19 and making infection more likely could still apply to receive an absentee mail ballot under state law. Voters could apply for the state disability program, which requires certification of the voter's disability by a physician. Dr. Philip Berry, a New York expert testifying for Landry, raised questions about the interpretations of testing, but he also said if someone were in quarantine, which is required of people who have been in contact with an infected person, he would not consider them to be disabled. All right, I'll take a little sip of coffee if you guys will bear with me. And our next story is city and parish retail sales set record in July. This is by Adam Daigle, Acadiana business editor. Retail sales in Lafayette Parish and the city in July were the highest amount reported for that month as the local economy continues to recover from the spring pandemic slump. The $536.5 million reported in the parish and $367.6 million in the city were down from last month, but still higher than the months prior to June, according to data released Wednesday by the Lafayette Economic Development Authority. It puts the parish at the $3.5 billion in sales this year, less than 3% off last year's pace of $3.6 billion, and the city's $2.3 billion is just 5.2% off last year's $2.5 billion. Those gaps are better than the May numbers that had the parish 5.4% behind, as sales have increased 20.7% in the parish and almost 25% in the city since April, data shows. Those numbers could continue to improve as the region recovers from Hurricane Laura, said Greg Gautreaux, president and CEO of the Economic Development Agency. July's taxable sales, buoyed by summer and back-to-school shopping, continue to show improvement from declines in March and April, Gautreaux said. The region may see a spike in taxable sales in the coming months as neighboring parishes impacted by Hurricane Laura continue recovery efforts, as we saw following Hurricane Katrina and the 2016 floods, he said. Among other municipalities, only Youngsville and Karen Crow remain ahead of last year's pace. Youngsville reported $26.7 million in sales in July, the third highest total on record, behind only last month's $27.7 million and the $33.7 million in September 2019. Karen Crow recorded $25.8 million in sales in July, the second highest total on record after last month's $26.9 million. Collections in Broussard are 6.6% behind last year's totals, and Scott is 4.1% behind last year's pace. Collections in the unincorporated areas are 11.7% ahead of last year's pace. Other data points of note in the city of Lafayette in July: after a dip in June, sales at grocery stores increased to $25.7 million, the third highest total this year, but still higher than any month prior to the pandemic. Sales so far in 2020 are just under 12% ahead of last year's pace, which was the highest on record. Sales at bars and nightclubs dropped below $2 million for the second time since the pandemic and only the second month on record. The yearly total is 30% below last year's pace. Jewelry store sales dipped by almost $3 million to $8.5 million after last month's $11.2 million. Hotel and motel sales dipped to $2.7 million after reaching $3.17 million in June. The $20 million in sales is 43% behind last year's pace. And up next, after the storms, our next headline is Odor on the River. Low oxygen levels following hurricane cause fish kill, stench on Vermilion River. And I can attest to that. I live near the river, and it smells pretty bad. All right, this story is by Megan Wyatt, staff writer. If 2020 were a fragrance, it might be that of decaying fish in a stagnant bayou on a steamy summer day. It's the scent that's wafted through Lafayette in the 2 weeks since Hurricane Laura made landfall, thanks to plummeting oxygen levels, causing a fish kill in the Vermilion River. You can literally see fish gasping for air, said David Cheremy, CEO of Bayou Vermilion District. There's still fish lifting up against the surface of the water, trying to suck in air because there's no oxygen in the water. The vermilion, named for its reddish tinge, has deepened to an inky color in recent days because of the oxygen shortage. The river gets its usual copper cover from an iron interacting with oxygen in the bayou, Cheremy said. The bayou's smell, along with the dead fish and darker color, aren't uncommon after a major storm, but Cheremy said this is the worst he's ever seen it. It's black, he said. The water's black. The storm debris from central and northern Louisiana washes away into waterways that drain into the Vermilion River. Those leaves, branches, and other organic matter deplete the water of oxygen as they decompose. It's made worse by higher water levels that until a few days ago prevented fresh water from being pumped into the Vermilion. People tend to forget that we live in a swamp, Jeremy said. Some people seem to think that the smell is from the sewage treatment plants, but water that comes out of the sewage treatment plants is the cleanest in the body of water, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's more oxygenated and cleaner. It comes out a lot better than it goes in. It's impossible to know how much longer the smell will last, but it's not expected to have a long-term impact on the ecosystem. Other than time, Jeremy said there is something that could help move things along. A blast of Arctic air. Just one more reason to hope for a cold front. It's going to get better, he said. We just have to wait for Mother Nature to run its course and all that water to flush out to the Gulf of Mexico and the fresh water from the Atchafalaya to get into the bayou. All right, so it will start smelling better. Thank goodness. All right, so in a little bit of sports news, LSU will open season with 25% capacity at Tiger Stadium. Tailgating will not be allowed on campus, by Brooks Kubina, staff writer. The lingering presence of the coronavirus pandemic has long shadowed what may happen to LSU's iconic game day atmosphere this football season, and the university's athletic department announced limitations Wednesday that were somewhat expected. Tiger Stadium will start the 2020 season with a 25% capacity limit according to LSU's newly released procedures and guidelines, which also say tailgating will not be allowed this year. The decision ensures the campus environment will be different in an unprecedented year, and that traditions including the football team's Tiger Walk down Victory Hill will be absent in a college football season that still faces several logistical obstacles. LSU was the 12th team in the Southeastern Conference to announce similar capacity plans. Only Kentucky and Vanderbilt remain. The official announcement comes a day after Governor John Bel Edwards told reporters he supported placing a capacity limit of 25% on Tiger Stadium this season. The moving target of public health trends required a patient approach, several school officials said. In a summer that has seen major conferences postpone fall sports, elite players opt out, and several teams halt practices because of outbreaks among players, the public now has a more complete view of what college football will look like when LSU begins its 10-game, league-only season by hosting Mississippi State at 2:30 p.m. September 26th. The most important thing is that we're scheduled to play football, said athletic director Scott Woodward. That's a reason for celebration. Conversations among the governor's office, LSU leadership, and public health officials produce substantial limitations for college football to even occur in Baton Rouge. Woodward told WNXX-FM 104.5 that Tiger Stadium's capacity was not dictated by Louisiana's reopening phases. It was a one-off, Woodward said, a unique circumstance that depended on what public health officials said. LSU could possibly pivot during the season, Woodward said. If trends changed negatively, stadium capacity could shrink. If positive, it could expand. Interim LSU president Tom Galligan told reporters Wednesday he doesn't expect capacity to change, but he's learned that with COVID-19 protocols, anything can change at any time and pretty darn fast. For now, the limitations inside Tiger Stadium are clear. Single game tickets won't be available for purchase. The estimated 25,000 people who will be allowed into the stadium will mostly be made up of season ticket holders and students. Students will have to prove they tested negatively for COVID-19 to enter, Galligan said, in a program that will be finalized later. The Golden Band from Tigerland will be downsized. Instruments will be covered to shield spittle. Band members will be restricted from performing on the field before games and at halftime. Visiting bands, per SEC policy, won't be allowed to travel at all. Outside Tiger Stadium, LSU has banned people from bringing tents, trailers, televisions, outdoor cooking equipment, generators, and other tailgating equipment. All parking lots, including free lots, will require a permit. Unused parking lots will be closed, barricaded, and not permitted for public use. One lot will be designated for motorhomes and RVs, but social gatherings and tailgating will not be permitted in the lot, which will be open at 6 p.m. on Fridays. Campus will mostly be shut down to visitors on game days. Buildings and bathrooms on campuses will be closed, and portable restrooms will be limited. Fans are required to remain 6 feet apart and wear masks covering their noses and mouths while on campus and inside Tiger Stadium, LSU's plan says, although masks may be removed temporarily while consuming food and beverages. LSU is allowing people to bring one 32-ounce or smaller bottle of water into the stadium. There will be a limited number of concession stands, which will offer a simplified menu with only prepackaged items. Such requirements follow the SEC's league-wide game day policy that it released in August. Social distancing will be mandatory in all areas, including lines for stadium entry, restrooms, and concessions. All transactions will be cashless, and there will be no paper tickets. The SEC requires schools to ensure social distancing if stadium shuttles are to be used, but LSU announced it will not use shuttles at this time. Parking lots will be consolidated to those near Tiger Stadium. Questions persist on how LSU might enforce its policies. Galligan told reporters Wednesday morning he believes the most effective way is repeatedly getting the message out before LSU's season begins. Enforcement still could go further. LSU Senior Associate Athletic Director Robert Munson said the university will have an organized staff specifically dedicated to monitoring masks and social distancing. The first step will involve education and reminders, then enforcement increases afterwards, although Galligan wasn't specific with details. If we have to enforce it, our first enforcement measures will be gentle and persuasive, Galligan said. If we have to be more forceful, we will, but I hope we don't. Even with Tiger Stadium at quarter capacity, Galligan said LSU officials are confident fans will be able to keep their 6 feet apart. Woodward briefly mentioned on WNXX a pod seating arrangement that Brian Broussard, LSU's director of ticket operations, has organized. The idea involves spacing groups of fans out across Tiger Stadium to maintain distance. LSU's plan said its ticket office will work to seat single ticket holders and groups of up to 8 people as close to their original seat locations as possible. The student section will still remain in the north end zone, and students will be grouped with assigned seating for social distancing. LSU announced its commitment to season ticket holders and students in July when the university said the two groups would be prioritized if stadium capacity reductions occurred. At the time, LSU said season ticket holders who want to opt out of the 2020 season will still be able to retain their seats for 2021. The deadline to opt out is Friday. LSU said it anticipates all who opt out will get at least a portion of their ticket allocation. The number of tickets available to fans from other schools will be substantially limited, Galligan said. Woodward said only 500 tickets are allowed for visiting teams. Galligan added it will be difficult to control situations such as LSU alumni who live in other states but have season tickets. Galligan said he is still confident that LSU can continue to have a memorable environment on Saturdays. There's a magic in the air in Tiger Stadium, and that magic is contagious, but not in a negative way, Galligan said. It's a whole lot more magic with 105,000 people, but there's going to be magic with 25,000 people, and that's a whole lot more magic than with no football at all. But again, safety's our guidepost. So yes, it will be Tiger Stadium, but like life has come to be, it will be different, Galligan said. All right, so our next story is official scammers posing as DOJ to steal personal info. And this is a staff report by the Advocate staff. The Department of Justice is warning that scammers claiming to be with the department may be targeting Louisiana residents, especially the elderly. The department is investigating multiple reports of the fraudulent calls, according to a statement from Acting U.S. Attorney Alexander C. Van Hook. The scammers call claiming to be Justice Department investigators or employees and attempt to obtain personal information. Sometimes they leave a voicemail with a return phone number, according to the statement. Upon returning the call, individuals are directed to a recorded menu that matches the menu for the department's main phone number. Eventually, the user reaches an operator who steers the user to someone claiming to be an investigator. That, quote, investigator then attempts to gain the user's personal information. The phone scams are an ugly and pervasive act of victimization, said Jessica Hart, director of the Office for Victims of Crime, which monitors reports to the National Elder Fraud Hotline. The scams being reported to our National Elder Fraud Hotline are especially heinous because they show the perpetrators are preying upon one of the most vulnerable segments of our society, the elderly, she said. As if this were not despicable enough, these scammers do so posing as employees of the Justice Department, usurping public trust in the agency that serves as a bastion of fairness and lawfulness while these scams exploit the elderly for financial gain. Anyone who receives such a call is strongly encouraged to protect their personal information and immediately report the call to the Federal Trade Commission at 877-382-4357. Again, that's 877-382-4357. Fraud can also be reported to the FBI for law enforcement action at justice.gov/criminal-fraud/report fraud. So you can report it at the FBI's website. Our next headline, police, a Eunice man, 29, accused of fatally shooting brother in head Tuesday, by Katie Gagliano, staff writer for The Advocate. A Eunice man was taken into custody Tuesday after police say he shot and killed his brother. Eunice police responded to a shooting at an apartment complex at 821 Beulah Street about 8 p.m. Tuesday and found 35-year-old Benjamin Herx unresponsive after suffering a gunshot wound to the head, Chief Randy Fontenot said in a statement. Herx was pronounced dead at the scene by the St. Landry Parish Coroner's Office. Herx's brother, 29-year-old Jonah Gobert, was also inside the apartment and crying out loudly, quote, crying out loudly when officers arrived. A .380 caliber semi-automatic handgun was recovered at the apartment, and Gobert was taken into custody on an outstanding warrant pending an additional murder count, Fontenot said. The warrant was for August 23rd incident and included counts of criminal damage to property, simple assault, and aggravated battery, according to the statement. Gobert was taken to an area hospital for treatment of an illness unrelated to the shooting incident. He was in guarded custody Wednesday morning and is expected to be booked on a second-degree murder count once released from the hospital, Fontenot said. And in our next story, a little state news, or south of the state, Gulf of Mexico fish farming plan moves forward, by Tristan Bauerich, staff writer. Floating cages with fish by the thousands may be popping up in the Gulf of Mexico after all. President Donald Trump's administration is pushing ahead with a controversial plan to start an offshore aquaculture industry in the Gulf, despite a federal appeals court ruling last month that appeared to block it. The U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans decided on August 3rd that the National Atmospheric and Oceanic Administration does not have the authority to set rules for offshore fish farms. Environmental and commercial fishing groups celebrated the decision, calling it a landmark victory in a long battle to prevent aquaculture in federal waters. But NOAA and other federal regulators said the ruling won't halt plans they're carrying out in accordance with an executive order Trump signed in May that aims to remove regulatory barriers impeding aquaculture. The Trump administration says offshore fish farming will broaden markets for seafood industry and help meet growing demand for fish. Floating fish farms use large net pens to raise vast quantities of fish, including salmon, sea bass, and tuna. Opponents say aquaculture operations permitted in nearshore waters by some states are significant sources of pollution from fish waste and diseases that easily spread to wild fish populations. Commercial fishing companies that depend on wild catches fear increased competition from the aquaculture industry. Shortly after the court decision, NOAA announced it would designate federal waters in the Gulf and off the coast of Southern California as aquaculture opportunity areas. These zones, according to NOAA, show strong potential for supporting multiple fish farms in ways that are environmentally, socially, and economically appropriate. That is a quote from them. Selection from the two regions is the first step in a process that could establish a total of 10 such areas nationwide over the next 5 years. Meanwhile, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers plans to streamline aquaculture permitting by trimming the public and agency review process for each permit application and creating the national permit for all similar facilities. Last month's ruling, according to NOAA officials, only blocks regulations implementing offshore aquaculture under Magnuson-Stevens Act, a primary law governing fisheries since 1976. Other laws, including the National Aquaculture Act of 1980 and the Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act of 1980, give NOAA the authority to develop aquaculture opportunity areas and conduct environmental impact permitting for offshore farms. The ruling is not a prohibition on marine aquaculture, neither nationally nor in the Gulf of Mexico, and we will continue to work with stakeholders through existing policies and legislation to increase aquaculture permitting efficiency and predictability, an NOAA spokesman said in an email. Federal agencies have adopted an indirect, piecemeal approach toward meeting the goals of Trump's order, said Marianne Cufone, executive director of New Orleans-based Recirculating Farms Coalition, a group opposed to offshore aquaculture. One agency could grant a permit to release a certain amount of pollution, and another could approve a farm's location and design, but the big one, a permit to actually operate an offshore fish farm, still isn't allowed, said Cufone, who also serves as director of Loyola University's Center for Environmental Law. No agency has been given the authority to permit these facilities to operate, she said. That, she added, would require an act by Congress. The aquaculture industry has found a few friends in Congress during the past efforts for offshore fish farming. It's troubling that NOAA is so proactively pursuing the creation of an industry that is unwanted and unpopular with the public, Cufone said. Only one offshore farm has been proposed in the Gulf. Ocean Era of Hawaii envisions installing an underwater net pen about 45 miles southwest of Sarasota, Florida. The project, called Vilela Epsilon, could produce 20,000 almaco jack, a fish similar to amberjack, each year. The company said it has permits from the Coast Guard and Florida and expects soon to have permits approved by the Corps and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. But Vilela Epsilon could run aground when it tries to get the green light to start rearing fish. Yes, the EPA can permit its effluent, and the Army Corps can approve its sitting in federal waters, Cufone said, but no federal agency can permit it to operate. And if one tries, more legal battles are likely to follow, she said. All right. And we are coming up towards the end. Thanks again for tuning in to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with The Advocate. We've got some sports stories, and I'll try and squeeze in some entertainment with the horoscope and Today in History. But let's go with our first sports story, at least now. Two of the best. Sunday's game, a rare meeting between pair of NFL's all-time top quarterbacks. This story is by Amy Just, a staff writer. Drew Brees can't help but think back to October 2, 1999. His undefeated Purdue traveled north to face an undefeated Michigan in front of a sold-out big house crowd. The two quarterbacks, Brees, a junior, and a senior named Tom Brady. It wasn't a memorable game for either of them. Michigan continued running its dual quarterback system, sending Brady to the bench twice. Brees hit the bench in the fourth quarter just after two drives ended with an interception and 3 and out. By the game's end, the Wolverines thumped the Boilermakers 38-12. Nearly 21 years later, they're facing one another as league rivals again, this time in the NFL. this time as two of the greatest to ever do it. Little did we know we would have the opportunities that we've had in the NFL, Breeze said. I'm sure I speak for both of us when I say that I think we both pinch ourselves. Football has historically been a young man's game, but more and more quadragenarians have laced up the cleats since the 1970s. Last season, Breeze became the 61st NFL player to play a game after his 40th birthday, but it's taken until this week for two 40-year-old quarterbacks to face off. And as it currently stands, Brady and Breeze are the two oldest active players on the NFL rosters. Saints coach Sean Payton doesn't see Breeze and Brady as exceptions to the rule, though. He believes the pair are trendsetters for what is yet to come. They're not going to be outliers, he said. The game's improved. There's science involved, Payton said, later adding, look, there's still a picture floating around somewhere of Lynn Dawson smoking a cigarette at halftime. So it's different, and it's going to continue to trend that way because that's where the money is. It's to the player's advantage, and it's in the player's best interest to play longer and extend their careers. Certainly, two of these guys that we're going to see Sunday have done that. Despite their simultaneous shoe-in Hall of Fame careers, Brady and Breeze have suited up against one another in the NFL just 5 times, a result of Brady having played in the AFC for his entire career and Breeze spending the last 15 seasons in the NFC. 3 of those matchups came more than 10 years ago, far before they'd cemented themselves as legends. And Breeze teams emerged victorious in all 3. The first came in 2002 when a 23-year-old Breeze quarterbacked the then San Diego Chargers in an upset over the reigning Super Bowl champion Patriots. The go-ahead touchdown came early in the third quarter when running back LaDainian Tomlinson scored on a 58-yard run, giving Breeze his first win over Brady. 3 years later, Breeze & Co. returned to the Patriots in Foxborough, stomping New England 41-17 on its home turf. Breeze's lone win over Brady as a Saint to this point is the only time the Purdue product has ever pieced together a game with a perfect passer rating of 158.3. In the Superdome in 2009, Breeze completed 18 of 23 passes for 371 yards with the 5 touchdowns to give the Saints a win over the Patriots for the first time since 1995. But in recent years, they played against one another twice, and Brady walked away with both wins, topping the Saints 30-27 in 2013 and 36-20 in 2017. Even though they haven't been directly competing often, they have been leapfrogging in the all-time charts. Last season, Breeze and Brady went back and forth for most of the year while in the hunt for Peyton Manning's career touchdowns record. Breeze currently stands atop the list at 547, but Brady isn't far behind at 541. Breeze has a little more cushion over Brady in career yards passing, as Breeze sits at 77,416 after 19 seasons, while Brady's at 74,571. And as their careers continue, they're leaving everyone else in the dust. It's special to be a part of it, Tampa Bay coach Bruce Arians said. When you get the two of the greatest all-time players playing against each other, it's always fun. The offensive weapons that surrounded both Brady and Breeze adds yet another level of spiciness to Sunday's battle. For Breeze, there's Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Jared Cook, Emmanuel Sanders, and Ty Montgomery, to name a few. Obviously, when you go against great players like Drew and a great team like that, you know there's a lot of margin for error. That's the biggest difference, Brady told Tampa-based reporters last week. They have a great quarterback, a great offense, incredible skill players, great continuity in their organization. For Brady, there's Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, Brashad Perryman, and that's excluding 3-time Pro Bowler Mike Evans, who missed Wednesday's practice because of hampered hamstring. Arians loves to throw the ball, safety DJ Swearinger said, who played under Arians for 2 seasons in Arizona. He has a quarterback that he really wants in Tom Brady to take the deep ball shots. Brady can still throw the ball deep. Come Sunday, Brady and Breeze will get their chance to show what they can do with their offenses, hopefully displaying how, despite being 42 and 41 respectively, they are not over the hill. They still have plenty more in the tank. Man, I'm on borrowed time, Breeze said. I've got nothing to lose. I'm turning it loose. All right, ladies and gentlemen, and that is all the time we have for the news. Thanks for sticking around. If you're on YouTube or on Cypress Street listening, the TV audience has already tuned out, but that is okay. We went a little over time. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will join you again tomorrow morning for local news live right here on AOC Community Media on Cypress Street Radio. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.